live glasses that allow you to see into other worlds. So I know most of you may know about this film from the 80s called They Live. It's pretty famous within conspiracy circles, but I've watched this a couple times throughout my life, and every time I see it with new eyes. The movie is honestly amazing. It starts out with your traditional 80s action movie, and you're basically following this guy who, through a seemingly random sequence of events, finds these glasses that have special properties. These glasses allowed him to see the world for what it really is. He could see past the realm of illusion and see the other truths and things. He could see messages seem to contribute to the sleepwalking state that modern humanity has been caught up in. These messages, such as obey and reproduce, subconsciously weigh people down to material reality. The weirdest part about the glasses, though, is that they allow him to see that many human beings look quite different when he wore them. They look like demons or some sort of reptilian-like entity, imitating or impersonating a human being. At first, the reptilian-like humans tell him to stop staring and, they think nothing of it. But then they start realizing that he can actually see them. So the cops begin to try and arrest him. The movie is a ride of an experience, and I highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it. There's a sense of sincerity to the film, as if it's exposing some sort of hidden truth. On top of that, the directing is just very unique, and it's just a one-of-a-kind film. The director who wrote it says that it's a documentary, which is really interesting when you tie it together with the work of Dr. Kilner. Supposedly, these glasses are based on a true story. In the 1920s, a scientist named Walter Kilner experimented with a dark blue chemical dye called Dicyanin, which he poured into a glass screen, and when he gazed through the screen, he found that he was able to see the aura of a person standing in front of him. He was able to see the person's aura because the specific color of the dye blocked out a large portion of the white light spectrum. This left only a small portion, which helped concentrate his perception of the aura. Now this gets interesting because supposedly in the 1940s they decided to make this dye illegal. Dicyanin is not a drug, it's not toxic, and it's made from coal tar. However, it's as if it's been erased from our knowledge because there's little information on the subject. The reason they wanted to hide it is because it allowed anyone to see into the astral. You didn't have to be sensitive or have to train in meditation. This knowledge needed to be suppressed in order to train and program future generations. Is there some sort of cover-up? Listen to this story about vets who were seeing demons with old military tech.
Yeah. So that means that they've had about 30 years to tweak this stuff wherever.
And I know that this stuff exists because my father's role in the military brought him very close to it many times. So my father did 3 tours in the Vietnam War. And in his second tour, he was advanced enough in rank, and he was there, I think, 11 or 12 months. And when he was in country at that point, he's always been a field officer and came up in the military through the Korean War and a battlefield commission. And so, the military likes guys like him, and they let him be in charge of a couple of different projects. One of the projects that he was in charge of at the time was this technology that they introduced into Vietnam that almost brought the war to a standstill. Wow. And this technology was a night vision goggle. But it's not night vision as we have it now, okay? Because the night vision goggle was done in the red spectrum. And so when my father came back from Vietnam...
You mean infrared or...
No, I'll explain.
Ordinary red.
Oh, ordinary red, okay. So instead of seeing... When you look at a night vision goggles now, you see green. Everything is translated into green for you. And human eye sees green, more colors, shades of green than any other color. It's part of our evolution, our need to find food.
So that's clever then.
Correct. But see, here's the thing. It started off as red. And so the night vision goggles were introduced to helicopter pilots and gunnery people in Vietnam. And I won't hesitate as to I won't guess as to which year it was that they introduced them. But my father was part of this initial experiment with the troops that he commanded. And it was a disaster because the image was presented in red pixels, not green. And because of the technology being used at that time, it created very interesting effects that they could not deal with. So you had some officers that were part of this cadre or this cohort of other officers that were all testing these new technologies for the military that had their troops always use these goggles. And those units became self-destructive. They went down in a horrid situation. My father was extremely practical, didn't want to see himself get destroyed in any way, wanted to return and get out. So as soon as he saw what was going on with these goggles, he had his people take them off. And he actually got praise from the military for the way that he dealt with all of this. But the effect was this: a gunner in a helicopter would have no problem using these goggles, and only everything is showing up as a sort of a faint reddish image. And it was true night vision the way we have it now, and even a greater depth, because you could also flip it and get an extra layer that was sort of yellowish that would be heat signatures as well. And they don't have those combined anymore in these goggles. Anyway, the goggles that were presented to the gunners, and my father tells the story of the very first time they're out with them, and they're flying along, and he's in the front of the helicopter with the pilot, and all of a sudden, in a very peaceful area, not anything going on at all, the gunner in his on the starboard side of his helicopter starts firing wildly at their height, not at anything on the ground, but at an area that he was shooting at, and basically causing other helicopters in their little flotilla to have to react. And my father goes on back to the gunner, basically demanding, "What the hell, dude? What are you shooting at?" and the kid is just sweating profusely, and his eyes are just dilated beyond belief. And my dad thought he was dealing with another heroin addict, but this was before it had gotten really bad in Vietnam, and the kid was not exhibiting those kind of symptoms. He was reacting to what he had seen, and he's describing to my father that he was shooting at these basically flying demons that were flying alongside the helicopter, and he knew they were coming to get him because they were gesturing at him and they could see him. And so he reacted, and he started shooting his Bren gun, big 50 caliber slugs at these things, right? And they were flying along right next to the helicopter, so he's firing out directly from the helicopter, and there are other helicopters in the vicinity, so it caused all kinds of problems. And this goes on repeatedly, week after week after week. Every time they try and use these night vision goggles, at some point they encounter monsters, true monsters. Now, officers had been told not to wear these. Okay, the pilots were told not to wear them, but my dad put them on to see what the hell was going on, and to hear him describe it, it was like being in the worst kind of a demonic gothic hell.
Jeez.
That you'd look out at the tops of trees and you'd see these creatures with big wings and claws and everything come flying off of the tops of the trees. But you take the goggles off, and there's not even a disturbance in the fog above the canopy of the trees, right?
They're perceiving into an aspect of consciousness.
Correct.
Another dimension.
And it was tied to the red image. As soon as they went to green, all of this kind of stuff disappeared.
Of course. And we don't have time.
Yeah, I know.
Me studying Pythagoreanism and vibrations, we could speak a lot about this, but let's not even go there. But one question: are these connected to the modern night vision goggles people used to see UFOs?
Correct.
Third generation or whatever they're called. Is this the same technology?
It's the same technology. It's just that the translation is done through a different phase alignment, and we're not seeing everything that the goggles could show you.
And they don't connect it to heat signatures either, right? Organic.
They don't do that, and then they also don't do it with a red display. Now, the red aspect of it is interesting, because the green display comes from electrons, not photons, okay? And it comes from an electron transmission. Presumably, they were still doing electron transmission. They were just turning it into a red filter.
Modern science, unsurprisingly, scorns this type of research and preaches that it is pseudoscience. But there is no way to test this for oneself, as mysteriously, the dye in which this experiment uses is very difficult to get hold of.
In his book, Human Atmosphere, Walter explains how he came about finding the dye, and explains in detail the different portions of the aura. In order to make this work, 2 screens were necessary, one containing a solution of spectoranine, an alcohol, and a second less dilute. Spectoranine was another term that Walter Kilner used for dicyanin. When looking at the body through the screens, first you see a dark band, not exceeding 1/4 of an inch, surrounding and adjacent to the body, without any alteration in size at any part. This he calls the etheric double. The second portion is the inner aura. It is the most densest portion and follows the contours of both female and male bodies. It arises just outside of the etheric double, but it does look as if it touches the body itself. The third portion, the outer aura, commences at the outer edge of the inner aura, and it varies in its size. When the whole aura is observed through the blue dicyanin screen, all the portions seem to be blended together, but the part nearest the body is the most dense. However, if a carmine screen is employed, which is a red dye that he experimented with in order to see more details of the aura, the different portions of the aura become distinguished. He compares many different auras and describes them in detail in his book, such as the difference between a healthy and a sickly aura. This practice should belong to the field of spectroscopy, but it seems as if the field has been covered up in a way so that it's not connected with the occult any longer. Today, analytical spectroscopy is defined by the range of electromagnetic waves interacting with the material, such as ultraviolet visible, infrared, X-ray, radio, or microwave frequencies. Using these methods, modern science can obtain information about atoms, molecules, or even stars in the sky. However, it seems all attempts to connect the occult with the subject have been suppressed, such as viewing auras with screens, looking into other worlds, and seeing beings that were not visible before. This goes back to Baron von Reichenbach in the 1800s. He was a German astronomical instrument maker who claimed to see auras around the poles of magnets and around human hands. He is the one who discovered paraffin and other coal tar products in the 1830s. Between 1835 and 1860, he also published a long series of scientific papers on meteorites. His many contributions earned him a well-deserved reputation as a brilliant scientist and industrialist. His colleagues, however, wanted nothing to do with his work on a mysterious force which he named Odd. Reichenbach documented the reports as sensitives seeing emanations from crystals and magnets in total darkness and detecting alternations of electric current. They could also perceive an aura surrounding the human body. This influenced the work of Kilner, but this technology is most likely not new and has been used in ancient times to communicate with other beings and to see into other realms. Magic mirrors, crystal balls, tinted glass windows in churches. These technologies existed in ages past, but they have now been lost in our modern time. And then we have stories such as with H.G. Wells' The Crystal Egg, where a shop owner comes to find a strange crystal egg that serves as a window into the planet Mars. H.G. Wells mixes this occult knowledge with the popular sci-fi culture at the time, but these ideas exist within our subconscious because they come from an ancient time when we were more connected with other realms of existence. There's actually a website online where you can buy them from Russia. They're called prana glasses, but it looks like they use the same method as Kilner. I don't know, there's some weird stuff on this site, but it seems that they might be for training your eyes to see the etheric realm. They say that you can take them off and still see the aura afterwards for a short period of time.